back, everybody. It's another episode of the Nonprofit Show. We have a huge show and a huge topic today. We are welcoming our guest, Tony Martignetti, and he's going to be talking to us about the 3 steps to a 1-week giving plan, a planned giving launch. Yeah, you heard that right. And so we want to get into this. I am joined today with the amazing Tim Sarantonio. He is our co-host, and we are here because we have amazing partners. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and JMT Consulting. Again, I am Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Tim Sarantonio has just launched a super cool thing that's going to revolutionize the way we talk about the nonprofit sector, and you've got to check it out. Tim, where can we learn more about your new board game?
Generosityspectrum.org. If you want to nerd out, you can go to launch.generosityspectrum.org, but that's the place to be for this new peer learning network and the educational gaming system built around it. I got a lot of stuff that I want to ask Tony because I'm viewing it through that lens too, right?
Awesome.
So it's all about motivation, identity, right? So nothing like that, like planned giving.
I love it. Well, Tony Martignetti, you've been on the show before. You've got a great podcast, the Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. But we're here to talk about a new book that's coming out, Planned Giving Accelerated. Talk to us about this, Tony.
First, Julia and Tim, thank you very much for hosting. And I will give a shout out also to Tim's Generosity Spectrum. He spent a lot of time with me at the Bridge Conference, showing me the game, the board, the beautiful wood box it's in, the concept of it. So I got to give a shout out to my friend Tim for developing the Generosity Spectrum. Julia, I wrote the book for small and mid-sized nonprofits. I shout them out in the subtitle of the book. It's a good lengthy title, but it makes a lot of promises to small and mid-sized nonprofits that they can launch planned giving fundraising in 3 steps and 1 week. And I wrote it for small and mid-sized shops because they are way off. Their mindsets are negative about planned giving fundraising. And I want to shift that to them recognizing how successful they can be with planned giving fundraising.
I love it. Well, Tim and I were talking in the green room, and we were chatting with you, of course, Tony. Can you start us off by level setting and defining what planned giving is? Because I think that everybody has a different sense of it. And so can you just start us with that description?
Yeah, really simple explanation. These are long-term gifts to your nonprofit that come in someone's estate plan or retirement plan, period. That's the definition. That's my explanation of planned giving. And the simplest example, and the one that I focus on in the book, and the one that I urge small and mid-sized nonprofits to launch with, is the very simple gifts in wills, also called charitable bequests. Those two mean the exact same thing. And that's the easiest example of a planned gift.
Well, one of the things that I love, because you have a dedicated chapter on that, and you actually have a nice throughout the whole book, there's a nice combination of like dispelling myths and also, kind of addressing some really concrete reasons if you need to make a case to your board, for instance, which, sometimes you got to do. They got to give you the resources and the flow. Can you name some of the reasons, and we actually flashed kind of one of them related to size, for instance, on why bequests in particular, gifts in will? I have one in particular that I'm going to call out, which is number 7, Tony, but why don't you, what are the top ones on why?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, they're the most popular planned gift. By far, you could expect 75% minimum of all the planned gifts in your planned giving program, because you're going to launch very soon after reading the book. And when you're doing planned giving 20 years from now, minimum 75% of your gifts are going to be simple gifts and wills. And I've seen it as high as 90%. So that's one reason, Tim. They're the low-hanging fruit. They're simple for everybody to understand. Everybody knows, all American adults understand three things about wills: what a will is, how wills work, which is very simply, and that they need to have a will. So those three things are in your favor. You don't have to spend a lot of marketing time and money educating folks on the nuances of a charitable remainder unit trust with net income makeup provisions, which is actually does exist. It's a real thing. But you don't have to deal with that. They're ideal for small donors, folks who make small, modest gifts to your nonprofit, because there's no lifetime cost. There, I just conflated two of the 18 reasons. I've got the Martignetti 18 reasons why.
Yes.
Gifts in wills are the place to launch your planned giving, which you're very graciously alluding to. I just put two together, that they're simple for your donors to understand, and you don't have to train your staff.
And people can read the book if they want the itemized one. But I'm going to call
number 7. I don't have them memorized by.
Oh well,
please shout out.
Look, and I'm not, folks. Sometimes I love and have these facts on recall. The 75% did stick out in my mind. For instance. That's kind of how my brain works. But I wrote it down, Tony. I wrote it down.
What's number 7? What was my number 7?
They don't have to tell you. And explain this one, because this gets into a little bit of the work that I do and things that I love talking about with Julia on this show, which is about identity and trust, right? It's not about just generosity. Why is a reason that they don't have to tell you they even made the gift a positive thing?
Because it's a comfort to your donors.
Yeah.
Look, you're going to give them lots of opportunities to self-identify that they have done this. They can check a box. They can pull you aside at an event, whether it's a newsletter or a sidebar, or a print piece or digital. You're going to give folks a lot of opportunities to check the box that says, I have included you in my will. Regardless of all those efforts that you're going to make, there's always going to be, in the US, that the statistic is 7 to 8 people who won't tell you that they've included you in their will for every one that does tell you. And there's so many folks, and there are a lot of reasons why, because it's so private, it's so personal. But I think, Tim, the one you want to get to is they are comforted knowing that they don't have to tell you, because they might have to change their mind. And if they have to change their mind, they don't want to go back on their promise by having told you. We all understand you can change your will 30 minutes after you've written it. You can line it out. You can go back to your attorney. You can go back online and change it. But knowing that they can change their mind because they haven't informed you gets to the value for the donors and keeping the trust with you that you just mentioned, Tim. Keeping the trust with this nonprofit that they love, because they feel if they do tell you, then they can't change their mind, even though legally they can, but morally they feel they've made a commitment to you and they can't change their mind. So that's another reason a lot of folks are not going to tell you. It's a comfort to them, and it keeps up the trust.
Yeah, I think that's riveting, and that really speaks, Tim, to the identity of a donor and how they feel about that. Because I think also too, people can get torqued out by something that the nonprofit does. Maybe they do something or change the direction of their mission, and that donor's like, whoa, that's not what I signed up for, and it's really an interesting aspect. Okay, so we've kind of you've given us an idea about what this looks like, Tony. Let's talk about your 3-step 1-week planned giving launch.
Yeah.
What would we be thinking about? I know we don't have a lot of time, but if you could just kind of give us this overview so that we can understand that this is something that as a small to medium-sized nonprofit, we can do.
Yeah, Julia, this is very digestible because it's only 3 steps. And I thank you for shouting out the Martignetti 3-step 1-week planned giving launch. The first 3 chapters of the book are the 3 steps. Now, so there are more chapters. It's not just a 3-chapter book, like it's only got 21 pages to the whole book. No, there are more chapters. But the only ones you need to launch planned giving Chapter 1 is step 1. Identify your top prospects. Chapter 2, step 2. Start with gifts and wills. Chapter 3, step 3. Cultivate and solicit your top prospects. Those folks you just identified in step 1. And those are the first 3 steps. And I promise you, I guarantee you that within a week of reading the first 3 chapters of the book, those 3 steps, you can launch planned giving fundraising. Because Julia, launching planned giving fundraising means you've had your very first conversation with a planned giving donor or prospect. That's it. That's your launch. You don't need a campaign. You don't need a press release. You don't need a website. You don't even need a web page. You don't need a mass mailing. You don't need a digital campaign. Just a conversation. So that's your launch. You've had your very first conversation with your very first top prospect for planned giving. Celebrate that. Celebrate it. You have launched planned giving fundraising at your small and mid-sized nonprofit.
Because I saw Tony give this talk at the Bridge conference too, and so it was just as tight as this, Julia. So when you were like, "We got limited time," I know we can fit it in. So it is something that I do want us to live in a little bit more of an uncomfortable question within that, Tony, because I think it gets to the heart of the work that I'm passionate about here, which is like building the confidence for these conversations.
Right.
How do you have that first conversation in a way that like for somebody like you, it's like we're talking about the thing, but somebody who's maybe a little bit more symbolic in how they're thinking, or just kind of a little bit more existential, they might be like, but we're talking about death, and that makes me uncomfortable to bring up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I was thinking the same thing.
How do you address the death question, basically?
No, literally, that was going to be my question. Yeah.
Great minds.
So go with that, Tony, because it's where the uncomfortableness lives.
In the book, I have Tony's top 6 myths of planned giving.
Yes.
I've got 5 of those myths in one chapter. And then the 6th myth is this one. It's so ugly to me. Distasteful is not even an adequate word. I despise this, what I call the 6th myth of planned giving, which is it's a death conversation. No, absolutely not. I don't. Our producer Kevin put my face up in the frame when I was objecting. When I was objecting so vehemently, I was shaking my head no as Julia said the death word. No, I turned that myth on its head. This is a conversation about life, and Tim, this gets to exactly what you're asking. How do you get into the conversation? You have a conversation with folks about the one thing that you know your top prospects for planned giving and you have in common. Now, your top prospects, and of course, there's a lot of detail in the book, your top prospects are your most loyal, committed donors. These are folks who've been giving to you for 20, 25, maybe even 30 years in some cases. That's not unheard of at all. So they love your work. Now, you also love your work because you're fundraising for it. And that is the one thing that you have in common with any donor, across all the things that divide us in the country, whether it's age, geography, politics, race, gender, identity. You have in common with every top planned giving prospect the love of your work. So why is this not a death conversation? Actually, we turn that on its head because it's a conversation about life. The life, longevity, and sustainability of your work, your mission, and your values in your community. You're talking to somebody who loves it, who's supported it for a long time. Otherwise, they would not be a top prospect for planned giving. And you love it. This is what you have in common. And that's why, by no means, it's actually the opposite of a death conversation. It's a conversation about life, sustainability, and longevity of your work in your community.
So on that note, you actually do something that I think is very practical, but also very funny to me, which is you list all the euphemisms for death in the book. So there's a dedicated thing. So instead of using the word death, folks, you could say departed, exhausted, expired, transitioned. entered the pearly gates of heaven, left the scene, kicked the bucket, snapped the twig, moved to the X floor, snuffed it, cooled it, shuffled off this mortal coil. The only one that I would like to add to help our animal rights friends is crossed the Rainbow Bridge.
Oh.
Okay, I'll add that to on my phone, I keep my euphemism list. Now,
yes.
Now you have to say though, I list those all out because I don't really like the euphemisms of death.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking to older folks, which you're most likely to be doing, talking to folks in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even, they are not afraid of the death, the D word. They're not afraid of death and dying. So I actually don't like the euphemisms. I don't use them. I don't say passed on. And of course, we know this is not part of your plan giving conversation because you're not talking about death as we just explained.
We're talking about life.
But in general, exactly, we're talking about life. But in general, I don't like the euphemisms. When I'm giving condolences to someone, I say, I'm sorry to hear that your mom died. I don't say that she passed or you lost her or she went to the X floor. That's a medical one where they're in I learned that one from a doctor. If they're in a 14-story building, they say the person went to the 15th floor.
It's like
X is one more than the top floor of the building. So I avoid the euphemisms in my own personal life and in professional life too. But I do have fun listing them out. Thank you for that shout out.
That's great.
Julia, I know that we're gonna kind of keep the conversation rolling, but there's kind of like a meta way that you've written this book too, that it's very conversational. Like it makes the topic a little bit more accessible. Even like you know, when you talk about meal, I know we might talk about meal, the acronym meal for a bit, but even little like footnotes on like, I did stand up, don't go looking for it, but here's the playlist, right? Like that type of stuff. It just makes it where you look at a footnote and you're expecting to see an extremely long, like, here's Russell James's like citation on that stuff. And you have those things, but you also use it to say like, you shouldn't be scared of this topic. And from a learning standpoint, because that's what I care about now, especially, is how people digest. I think this is it's a fun way to write the book too.
Thank you very much. And Russell James, thank you for shouting out him because he wrote the foreword for the book.
Yes, he did.
So the book is easy, accessible, approachable, humorous. I hope it's humorous. Sounds like you got the humor of it. It's the humor starts in the lengthy title, so you can't really miss it. But Russell James, the preeminent planned giving fundraising researcher at Texas Tech University, wrote the foreword for the book. So he's signed on with easy, accessible, and affordable planned giving for small and mid-sized nonprofits.
I love it. Well, let's get into that Martinelli meal plan. What is that? Because, you know, I'm fascinated to hear how we take this process and what this might look like.
Thank you, Julia. The Martignetti meal plan. MEAL is an acronym for Meals Expertly Allow Learning, because I believe that the shared space of a meal, a lunch table or a dining, well, it could be breakfast, lunch, or dinner table, that shared space, that puts us in community with the donor, or maybe it's a donor couple who we're meeting, right? It might be two folks and you alone, or it might be one-on-one. Either way, it's a community. We're sharing a space, that table. And then also the other value of donor meetings over meals. That's why I introduced the Martignetti meal plan, because I recommend donor meetings over meals. The other advantage, besides being in community in that shared space, the regular cadence, the pace. There's a shout out to your producer, Kevin Pace. The timing, the cadence, the pace of a restaurant meal. Everybody knows what it is. We don't have to explain it. We don't have to say that, oh, now we've got 15 minutes because the entrees just dropped at the table. Now we've got only 5 minutes because we just gave our drink order. Everybody knows the cadence and the pace, and you can time your conversations around that shared understanding of cadence and timing. So now I do have to add, for folks who are not comfortable with a meal meetings, because maybe they don't, well, if my donor orders alcohol, then do I have to have alcohol, but I don't drink, or I don't want to drink while I'm having a business meeting? Who picks up the check? You know, if I don't want to do these meetings in public. If these things don't resonate with you, then please, you do you. You have your donor and prospect meetings wherever you are comfortable. But I do put forward the Martignetti meal plan because, look, I'm Italian too. Food is important. We're not sharing the plate, so I'm not sharing my meal with you, the donor or prospect, but I am sharing the table with you. And I think there's an advantage to having these meetings over meals. So thank you, Julia, for asking about that.
So do you get a big plate of spaghetti though? Because you might get like sauce all over. Like this happens to me all the time. Like I actually want to talk about the meal for a moment. Like for real. Like what do we order? What type of place is a good place to go to versus don't bring them to this. Don't go to Buffalo Wild Wings for your planned giving conversation, for instance.
Right. That's sticky, messy finger food. But I believe there's a footnote that has a pro tip.
Yep.
If you're in an Italian restaurant, don't get fettuccine, spaghetti, linguine. Don't get the long ones because you're going to curl them up and you're going to get a spot on your shirt.
Always.
Get the rigatoni, the penne, the radiatore. Get the little pastas. Don't go for the long ones. The bucatini, that's another mistake. That's the long tubes, the long skinny tubes. Don't get those long skinny ones. Get the little pastas, and then you don't have to worry about splashing on yourself.
You guys are making me hungry. Totally making me hungry.
My lunch is sitting over there.
You got the two Italians. We're going to talk about food.
I know.
I'm loving it. I would say, Tony, I live in a community. It's the 5th largest city in America, but it's still a small community in many ways. And I'm always uncomfortable about going to public places where I feel like those conversations can be overheard, or somebody sees like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Smith are meeting with the development director from this organization. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. I mean, should we just look for a place that's a little bit more quiet, or how do we resolve that social?
Where do you live, Julia? What's the 5th largest city in the country?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix. Okay. Yeah, that's why I hasten to add, if you're not comfortable in a restaurant setting, then don't do it. Then you do it the way you are most comfortable. I know the restaurants that I invite people to. I would never invite someone to a restaurant I haven't been to before because I know what kind of table, I know where to sit, a little quieter space. But again, if you're not comfortable in that setting, then by all means, you go to the donor's home, their office. Look, being in their office, that's lots of cues. You have infinite, not literally, you have figuratively infinite items of conversation around pictures and certificates and items on their desk and on their credenza and all kinds of things you can ask about. Or you bring them to your site and you can have great donor meetings in your own office. So, I know the places I'm taking people or inviting people to come to in advance. So you're right. The privacy is a bit of a concern.
Well,
it's interesting, the pacing. I never, ever, ever thought about that until you brought that up. But absolutely, there is I almost want to say a universal cadence to what's going to happen. And it helps you keep on track or know what you have to say. That to me was super powerful because I've been a part of that, but I don't think I ever realized that I was a part of that. Right.
And the other advantage to a restaurant is you're not in the donor's office where they might get distracted. Something urgent might come across their desk. All of a sudden your meeting is cut short and the agenda's ended because the meeting got cut short. Likewise in your office, there could be office distractions. So it's a neutral space. That's another advantage.
Yeah. Tim, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's just, I like my roundtable discussions, obviously, right? It's like, leave the pledge, take the cannoli. But it's, sorry, I had to throw it in there. So, Tony, one of the chapters also did talk about this, but I'm also, nerding out a little bit in the later chapters in the book, looking at what appears to potentially be a database interface for prospecting, right? So let's maybe touch on a little bit on prospecting and marketing to these types of folks, right? Like, what do you hand them? How do you find them? Basic stuff like that, right? And I know you could touch on this pretty quickly. You did this in Bridge as well, but touch on that. Where do you find a plan giving prospect in your database?
Yeah, you have. Thank you for saying it exactly that way, Tim. That's exactly right. Perfect. You have all the data you need.
Yeah.
Don't spend money on a wealth screen. Don't spend money on a planned giving propensity screening. Loyalty, long-term giving. That's, I lay it out in chapter 1, which is step 1, identify your top prospects. I give you the queries for loyalty, for longevity of giving. Look, they may have lapsed for a couple of years in the past, but they came back. As long as they're current donors.
Streak giving. Yeah.
As long as they're not currently lapsed. Yeah, if they're not, a 30-year streak, I mean, you might lapse a year or two in there. As long as they're current donors, that's how you find your planned giving prospects. That longevity of giving, and for top prospects, at least one person in your nonprofit has a good relationship with them.
Yep.
Takes their calls, responds to the event invitations, comes to the events, answer the emails, replies. So that's the person who's going to end up having the cultivation and solicitation meetings, ideally, with the with that particular top prospect. So that's easy. You have all the info you need in your database and among your relationships.
And I like what Tim asked. What is it that you hand them? Like what is a document or brochure as part of your solicitation package? What should that include when you're meeting with this type of donor?
Yeah. Julia, to start these planned giving conversations with your top prospects, you don't need to leave behind. That becomes an obstacle. Remember, step 1, identify your top prospects. Step 2, start with gifts and wills. And step 3, open conversations, have the cultivation and solicitation conversations. We don't need the brochure because that becomes a bit of an obstacle, a burden. Now we got to do the 4-color brochure. Now we got to get somebody to write the planned giving text. We don't have anybody. Now we got to hire somebody. No, that's all sort of antithetical to the Martignetti 3-step 1-week planned giving launch. Look, if you want a brochure later on, you can develop that. You want a planned giving page later on, and again, you don't need a planned giving website. A page will suffice. Those are the things that you can do later on in your program. I want you to get into conversations with your top planned giving prospects. And so you don't need to leave behind. The conversation is serious enough. You're only talking about gifts and wills because that's the place to focus your launch. You won't need to leave behind. Your donors aren't going to forget these meetings, and you're the professional fundraiser. You're going to follow up.
Right. Well, this has been an amazing conversation that I don't want to leave behind, but our time is almost up.
All right.
This has been fabulous. Tim, I loved that not only did you get to hear Tony speak about this in person at the Bridges conference, but that you've read the book and made notes. It was really cool to have that type of engagement. Tony Martignetti Planned Giving Advisors. You can go to plannedgivingaccelerated.com. Tony, when does this book come out, and where will we be able to find Planned Giving Accelerated?
It comes out on September 15th. It'll be in Amazon. It'll be in Barnes and Noble, and all the book info is at plannedgivingaccelerated.com, including the wait list. So before September 15th, you can join the wait list at that site.
Love it. It's really cool. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's super powerful at this point in time when we know we're going through the great wealth transfer. We're at the midpoint, basically. This is an opportunity not to be missed. And I love, Tim, your comments about being fearful, about talking about death, and Tony got right on it. No, it's about life. I love that. And if you needed a conversation about confidence and why we need to be doing this in our sector, for me, that was the golden point because it just immediately switched, my brain into thinking about what a great opportunity this is for somebody. And so, Tony, thank you for coming back and talking with us.
Julia, thank you very much for hosting me. And Tim, thank you for spending time with the book too. Thanks to both of you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, really a lot of fun. We're, we just celebrated our 1,600th episode last Friday, and that's because we have these amazing partners. Most of them have been with us from the very beginning. And they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and JMT Consulting. These are the folks that allow us to come to you each and every day. As we leave with this message, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. We'll see you again.